The machinery of protection for refugees in Europe has been broken for some time. Way back in the Balkan crisis, Germany was shouldering the lion's share of the protection burden and called back then for so-called burden sharing, and it never happened. And that's exactly where we are now too. So Germany's taken over 80% of the migrants, with other countries, West European countries like France and the UK really dragging their feet. Getting agreement is hard. Getting countries to agree to burden sharing, whether it's a fixed quota, which many countries are against, or whether it's some commitment to take a substantial number, is very hard, because politicians are looking at their electorates, and the sort of groundswell of humanitarian support is matched by the groundswell of xenophobia. So I think the challenge is huge, and leadership has been strong, I would say. The European Union, some of the European Union leaders have come out more strongly in favor of humanitarian solutions recently than I can recall, which is great. But the political challenges are very difficult, and the EU is not able to kind of insist on uniformity. I mean, it's a union based on consent. I would predict several things. Firstly, in line with what has been happening, it's going to get harder and harder for people to get in. Germany's closed its borders, Hungary's erected a fence, other countries are following suit. So the very large entry that we've seen over the last few weeks will stop. People will take harder routes, more expensive routes, more perilous routes. As we get into winter, more people will perish. So I think the challenge is to find a mechanism for delivering on the promises that Europe entered into 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, after World War II, by making it possible for refugees to get safety, whether it's permanent or temporary, whether it's at the southern border or distributed across the Union. I think that's all up for grabs. But having a system of international protection that works is really an imperative. It's interesting, all the countries that are members of the European Union have ratified the UN Refugee Convention. They have to. It's a prerequisite of being in the EU. And as far as I know, not a single country has said, we want to withdraw from that. So in one sense, there's still a commitment to the importance of protecting refugees. People aren't saying, we're done with refugees. Nobody has said that, not even Hungary. So that is an opening. That gives possibility to those of us who feel that there's a huge obligation. That's one. Second, you only have to make an argument about sort of global equity, I think, to really make the point of Europe's obligation. Jordan, with less than 1%, 0.2% of the resources of the European Union, has infinitely more refugees from this crisis than the whole of the EU. It's just inconceivable. A small country like Jordan, which has had wave after wave of refugees, is shouldering a much bigger burden than the whole of the wealthy European Union. So there is capacity. It's really political will and the determination to live up to these obligations, I think, that needs to be pressed. And human rights treaties really are an instrument to be used in that context.